Alrighty, welcome to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we enable the inner warrior to shine in their light. Today, I have author and trainer and women's empowerment coach, Mel Tuomi. She's the CEO of Ultimate Feminine Weight Loss Formula and the author of Dream Body Method. Mel, I appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I know that your story is quite compelling in the fact that you're now helping women, empowered women, and also you're focused on weight loss and doing it the correct way. What got you into the weight loss journey?
From my past, I had quite people would say traumatic upbringing. And so it kind of took me down a path of not feeling empowered, really being in that victimhood, actually being a victim, and then perpetuating that victim mindset after, I removed myself from it somewhat. I really never removed myself. I was still quite into it. Looking back, I was, still allowing myself to be in circumstances where I was being victimized. And I got into health and fitness quite young, I think, as like a way to get some of that power back. I was about 19. I am 41 now. And I got into things like Pilates and yoga. I was looking for anything that would kind of just separate the life that I knew and take a drastic turn into hopefully something that would, just give me a better life. And that's really how I first got into it, was really to empower myself. It was later on, years later, where I started to put two and two together, that weight, my trauma, and what people were coming to me with and the past that I had, there were a lot of similarities, and they all ended up having struggles for people, whether it was addiction or food or alcohol or mental, struggles, emotional struggles. Like there were these wounds afterwards, and realizing how similar I was and they were helped me go down a different path that I am now. And that's how I ended up writing my book. But yeah, it first started off just me empowering myself.
Well, it's from my own experience and from the experience with my wife, because she had a traumatic childhood and upbringing as well. Those traumas become part of the fabric of our DNA, and we carry them. Even though we think we may have dealt with them, our body carries them and holds on to them, which causes the hair loss and the weight gain, and you can diet all you want, but until you heal that inner person, some of that stuff is going to just repeat itself over and over and over again. What were some of the traumas that you, whatever you care to share, that you experienced, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, so I guess it's weird, but I'm getting chills. But one of my first memories, unfortunately, was of I was living in Milwaukee, which Milwaukee is not the best neighborhood, but again, this was a long time ago. I just remember walking home from school at 5 years old, all by myself, and just coming into my house and having it be empty. Apparently, at that time, my mom had a husband and he stole all of our things while we were gone. And at 5, you can imagine that would be horrifically traumatic. Like
Sure.
everything is gone. You're all by yourself. Your room, everything in my room was gone. All my Barbies. Like I'm 5. I'm a little tiny baby munchkin, like doughy person, like this little adorable child. And I remember it so like viscerally that like I just came in and I was screaming and crying, and I don't know if I had necessarily thoughts, but I think, some of the thoughts might have been like, I can't believe she left, where are they? I remember going out into my, I remember running around my house just screaming and crying and like going into my front yard and just ripping at the grass, like I was just so distraught. And I ended up, the neighbor brought me in, and I ended up getting taken away by, I guess, social services. And I just remember, staring out of the window of this car all by myself, looking at this house going, I'm never going to see that house again. I'm never going to see my friends again at 5 years old, and having this like 5-year-old existential crisis. And I
Yeah.
didn't, and I ended up going into foster care, which was very hard. Just not being around people that I knew, and, my mother missing some appointments to come visit me. And so that was one of my first memories. I think one of my the memory that affects me the most is my mom's boyfriend at the time was molesting me, and he was a live-in boyfriend. And I think that was the real trauma that kind of set this domino effect of I would say self-hatred, low self-esteem, very turned inwards, untrusting of anyone. I didn't have a lot of friends. I just wasn't able to open up, and I started drinking pretty well. I don't know, want to say heavily. I was 12. I don't know really how you gauge the amount of drinking a 12-year-old does. But I do remember I started drinking. I even, drinking on the bus, and there was mental and physical abuse by people in my family. And it was just a situation where I just didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like there was people in my life to protect me. And the only person who could protect me was myself. So I spent a lot of time, like my biggest struggle back then was drinking. And I drank a lot, and I would drink to the point where I would black out. And I feel like part of that was when I drank, I could quiet my mind, because my mind was very critical. And I think that was the big thing. Like when I drank, I didn't think so much. And that
So
gave
where
me,
does a 12-year-old get alcohol to black out? I mean, it's one thing to take a sip here or there, but to have enough consumption that you're blacking out all the time.
well, so I mean, I grew up in a small town. There was a lot of parties in woods. My mother was a drinker and a smoker, so she would have parties at our house. There were boyfriends who were drinking and smoking who would give me alcohol and weed. I remember I missed a choir concert. I loved choir. That was also like, even though I had this rebellious, and I don't even think it's rebellious, I think it was, survival thing for me, because I couldn't at that time deal with everything that I was dealing with. And I really didn't have anyone, at least I felt I didn't have anyone to turn to. I didn't have any other family. But I was also very into like school. There was part of me that was really into school, and I wanted to do better. So I was the type of person who would get straight A's, and I had a learning disability, and it took me a lot. And I spent a lot of time in art class and choir. And I remember I would spend all my study halls in choir class. And I got this solo. I once had a solo in Disney World, which I'm still very proud of, fan of the opera. But I had this solo in choir, and it was one of those things where it was just a passion. It wasn't that I was so great at singing. It was just, again, another outlet to express myself. And I just remember my mom's boyfriend giving me alcohol and drinking and going, I feel like I should be somewhere. And it's like a Sunday or a Saturday. And yeah, I missed my choir concert because I completely forgot about it, missed my solo. I don't know, it's just those little pieces in my life that, although I have come so far, I still look back at and I go, oh man, like what would have been like if
Mhm.
I had somewhat of a normal upbringing. But yeah,
Right.
so the place about getting alcohol, it was everywhere. It wasn't hard. It was in the house, it was in friends' houses, it was in parties. Yeah.
So you were taken into foster care at 5, and then obviously reunited with your mom in order to have
Mhm.
access to the alcohol that you're talking about. How long were you in the system before
Yep.
you were reunited?
I was only in there for a year, I think. a year and a half. I
Okay.
don't remember exactly. It's not something that I really talk to my mother about. She's not super open about um, the past, which I'm okay with. I don't need anything, I don't need that forgiveness or anything anymore. I've kind of moved on. I realized I wasn't going to get any kind of closure from her, and she gave me all that she could. And so, yeah, I go off of basically what I remember, and we have to remember that I was young and drinking.
Drinking and high, yeah.
Not that
So
young. At least I
yeah,
wasn't drinking at 5.
yeah. The memories kind of get fuzzy. So from 12 till how long until you decided that that wasn't the life you wanted to live anymore?
So I would say, well, I mean, I had you know, in high school, I got by. I got decent grades. I had some tumultuous relationships, very unhealthy, with very, very, very toxic people. So one thing I would just want to say is I'm really, really lucky to be alive. Looking back, like I'm extremely lucky to be alive. There were a couple instances where I was drugged and raped. And one of those instances, and this is hard for me to say because I know some people would maybe not agree with this, and I might not agree with this now, but at the time, it was necessary for my survival. But I did go on a date and I was drugged and raped. And in my town, it became something very, no one knows exactly my specific circumstances, but it was very well known in the area because it was kind of something that was on the news that someone was doing to a bunch of people. But I ended up getting pregnant and I ended up having an abortion. And for me, that's kind of hard looking back now. But I knew the state I was in. When I found out, I did try to kill myself. So it was like very scary because I was still only 20 on my own, barely getting by. I think I had 4 different jobs. And yeah, it was just one of those circumstances where it just felt like everything was kind of imploding on me. I didn't kill myself. I tried, but I was okay. I had someone here who took care of me. Um, but the interesting thing after, that is that a few months later, I started a relationship with someone who I cared for very, very much. And he was actually a responsible person. My first real healthy relationship. And I got pregnant. And yeah, that's when things started to change because for the first time in my life, um, I felt safe. Like I actually had someone and I didn't have to do it all by myself.
Yeah, it's started to feel like it wasn't just about you, it was about you and others, including your child.
Yeah. I was 21 when I got pregnant. And I think any parent would probably say this, but for me, it was that time where it was the most important thing that's ever happened to me. And my greatest fear was inflicting any kind of harm on my child. Like I was so scared that because I knew like at that time, obviously I was still broken and I wasn't quite on my path. I'd done things because I was 21. I had like already started doing yoga and Pilates, but obviously I wasn't healed. I was trying, but I was still very unconscious, still very traumatized. But having my son really pushed me to like go, okay, I gotta start doing something. I mean, I wasn't healed. It was a long journey, but it was definitely a big switch for me.
So did you at that point get off of the drugs and alcohol, or was it a process or a cold turkey type of thing?
Um, I was not drinking as frequently. I was, I have to be honest, like I still had this pull to drink, because I feel like part of me was obviously was still hurting. Like I hadn't done anything to fix it. I was just now in a safer place. But there was still part of me that gravitated to alcohol to, I think, quiet my mind, my inner critic, that voice that after all this stuff happened, that keeps telling you that you're a horrible person. You're never going to make anything of yourself. You're not enough. You're going to ruin your child. You're not worthy of love. You're not worthy of having safety. Yeah, there was a constant, and I also have a personality. I don't know if people are super into like personality tests or anything,
Yeah. Mhm.
but I'm an INF, INF, was it INFJ? I think it's one of the more rare types. And I think we have like this intuitive intuition. And so basically, I spend my whole life in my head. And it's not great when the people in your head um, don't like you very much.
Yeah. You,
So,
you have a staff meeting of critics.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no nice guys in there. So
Yeah. And it's funny because before we started the interview, I had asked you about your tattoos, the visible ones, and many people get tattoos that are very meaningful and important. And so I asked you, what's the significance of the bear paws? And your answer was,
I think I told you I was just drunk and dumb and
yeah, just
like I was a young kid. But then obviously I went forward and said, at the time it was very meaningful for me. There was an artist, a rapper, who some of her songs like just gripped me. I think when you have trauma, I think people who um, are deep in trauma, maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I feel like a lot of us are really resonate with music, that emotional, like just being able to feel something.
Mhm.
And so there were songs about abuse and this and that, and just there's things that she's saying about that really just made me feel seen and made me feel like this girl is strong, she's a bad bee. And at that time, that I think I needed that persona, I needed that other identity to kind of pull me through,
Yeah.
because I have one identity where I was a victim and I would just kind of go into myself and kind of disappear. And I wanted that identity of being strong and tough.
Yeah. And you can say bad bitch because
I was like, you could tell I was
no,
holding back.
you don't have to hold back here at all. Everything is, I mean, we're adults, and bad bitch is actually a good thing because it is an empowerment. It's a persona. But it's interesting because my background is psychology, and so I actually wrote my thesis on how music heals the brain, and
Mm.
it's very interesting, and examples all over the place on how people use music to get them through either their trauma or propel them out of where they were or something that they gravitate to. There's something empowering about lyrics that touch our heart, and the melodies that touch our mind, to bring us through that other side. And so it's very interesting that you also choir, the songs, and you embrace
I
the music
dance,
and dance, right?
like really one of my biggest things that got me into the fitness was being able to put on my music and I just lift weights for hours. When I was younger, it would be rollerblades. I'd put on rollerblades and I'd rollerblade for hours. And it wasn't because I loved working out so much. I mean, I loved being able to get in touch with my body in a healthy way, but it was always the music. If I could put music on, rollerblading, lifting now, like hours and hours, and I just love it so much. It brings me so much energy, so much joy. It uplifts me.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that, so, you say that those tattoos are, when you're drunk and stupid, but I think the empowerment and the meaning behind them is actually something that's essential as well. Prior to you getting into fitness, were you a heavy set girl, or were you always pretty fit?
I would say I was looking at me, I was probably pretty average. I'm much fitter and healthier now. Um, my biggest things were, I think I would have been bigger if I wasn't as active. I was really, really active, mostly just, again, trying to escape myself.
Right.
So I was moving a lot, but I feel like my main, and this is how I see it, because when I do work with people in my program, I use weight loss for myself. Um, I use this as a tool because I see people who are struggling with weight are struggling with something else. It's never the food in and of itself. It's always something else. And it's the same thing with drinking, that I realize that there's three things that I always, that are the pillars of what I talk about. And one of them is, yes, it's the working out, it's the metabolism, it's aligning with the female hormones, which is really important when it comes to female health, but spirituality, everything kind of, when you start to realize that there's like this natural universal rhythm,
Mhm.
and that's in our bodies, especially in females, and it's with everything. And so only one part of it is about the food and about the female metabolism and the ebb and flow. But the other two huge parts is the energetics, which is like the emotional part. It's the consciousness. It's all like on a scale, and you can see how your emotions line up with your energy, with your consciousness. Um, and so you can see where people are by the emotions that they're addicted to. You can understand where people are on this energy range by the conversations that they have. You can tell where people are on this energy range by the hobbies that they create, the people that they hold closest to them. And so this is something that if you're dealing with weight issues, you can see it on the energy scale. Where am I? It's the same thing as my trauma with drinking. It's on the scale. You can tell where it is. I mean, I did have an eating disorder, so I am very, but the thing is with my eating disorder, I was bulimic. And actually, if I were to, and I'm honest about it now, but for the longest time, that's the one thing I wouldn't tell anyone. It was actually my biggest like shame. And shame is so low on the energy scale. It is the very bottom rung. It's the lowest of lows. It's like literally before death. When your energy is so low and your main energy you emanate is shame, you're right near the end. Like that is really the lowest. It's the hardest to get out of. It's the hardest to create in your life. And so the shame of having an eating disorder because of what I did, and this was again when I was in my early 20s and I'd already started doing fitness, that shame of having physical weight on my body was something that my ego wouldn't allow. And so I would binge, just like maybe someone who has just a binge eating disorder, which a lot of times people who are overweight do. Sometimes they're just people who energetically, they're stressed out, overwhelmed. It's a very interesting energy realm because it's like right above, like right below where things can start to shift, but it's right above the lowest of lows. So it's like this weird energy where you're frustrated, where you can kind of see that things are going to get better, but you keep getting pulled back down. But my eating disorder was bulimia. So, and I kept that secret for 6-7 years before I healed, and I healed myself. But I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my husband at the time. I didn't tell my son. I didn't tell friends, family. It took me a while before I even told a therapist I was talking to. I just told her because I felt like I needed to tell someone. So for me, I did gain weight, but not excessive amounts because I was purging.
Well, it's interesting because it's easier to tell about your abuse, the sexual abuse and the trauma with your parents and ex-boyfriends and all that, than it is the bulimia, mainly in my opinion, because one is done to you and one you're doing to yourself. So one you can justify because it wasn't you doing it, and the other you don't justify. Those voices in your head have their own committee meeting about it, and shame is shame and guilt, right? So, and I would imagine as you've healed and come through this, it's been easier for you to forgive all those other people than it has been for yourself. That's been the hardest one for you to let go of, I would imagine.
It was so hard because I felt like the biggest hypocrite in the whole world.
Mhm,
And, moving past that and helping other people, you realize that the one thing, and this is where like the last like pillar of my program, I just bring it up because it's how I also created my program. But that you create this identity for yourself. And then when things don't align with it, that is really, really hard. I think that's really hard when you feel like a hypocrite, when you feel like you're saying one thing and you're doing something else.
mhm,
And so, yeah, and for me, it was like, oh, I'm supposed to be this person who's a fitness person and I'm healthy and blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't let anyone know the secret. It will ruin me.
mhm.
And when I say me, I mean my ego,
Yeah,
this version of myself that I created that has nothing to do with who I am, my consciousness, who I am at my soul level, which has nothing to do. And that's one thing, as we chat a little bit, that might be a little bit different from what a lot of people believe is I did use my story to become a warrior, and I really connected with that story. And I used it to be a hero in my own story. But
mhm.
I come to a place where that no longer serves me. And what serves me the most is realizing that it's just a story. It's just a story, and I let it go. It's not who I am. Like, who I am at my core is just consciousness. It's me, it's being. And again, I kind of go back to Eckhart Tolle because that really helped switch things for me, that it's like, I am not my past. That is a story that's not real. There's no such thing as the future. We are the everlasting now in this very moment. This is all I am. The rest, just a story. And
Yes.
to be really conscious and to really be present and to really transcend, you need to realize, I need to realize that that story is not me. I am not my body. So those things did not happen to me. I am not my mind. So the thoughts and the stories I create are not me. These are all the ego. This is the ego's identity. And I am the one watching it. I am the one witnessing it. I'm the one conscious of it. I am being here right now without the stories, without the goals. Um, so for me, it's, and again, when I say things like this, I always want to preface that it doesn't mean you shouldn't get strength from your story, because that's what took me to get here. That's what allowed me to create my programs, to help other people increase their consciousness, to rewire their thoughts and their beliefs and those little critics and that negative stuff. The
Mhm.
last thing I was going to talk about is that the mindset, and really helping people rewire that. I have a system called ROI, and it's about releasing the limiting beliefs. You actually go in using like NLP.
Yep.
Um, then we use omnipresence, which is basically really understanding and learning how to de-identify with the thoughts, de-identify with the mind, de-identify with the emotions. It doesn't mean become a zombie, but being able to move out of the way so that they can process, but you don't attach a story to them. You don't attach your identity to them. And then the I in it is install. And so then I help people install empowering beliefs. So I know I feel like I'm going all over, but usually when I
Oh,
talk
you're
about
fine.
this, my brain is just like, and then this, and then this, and then this. But that's how I really feel like when it comes down to it, it took me using my story from being that victim to becoming the hero, and then being able to detach from all of the narrative to
Yeah,
really
and
consciousness.
it's timely that we're talking about this, because in the new course that I just released, one of the last modules works on what you were just talking about, how we have to rewire our brains, because it's like, let's say you had a smell that was attached to that trauma, right? And so you're no longer in the situation, but you smell that smell again, and it takes you right back to
Mm,
that trauma. So you keep reliving it by that association. So until you rewire the brain to deassociate or disassociate, that smell from that trauma, it's always going to haunt you and affect you. So removing yourself totally, I talk about, because I had 3 fusion surgeries last year, right? And I talk about how the scar is now just the tapestry of my life, right? It doesn't hurt me, it doesn't affect me. It's just a part of the story that I told, the story that I lived. So detaching from that, I think, is vital. And one of the things I really appreciated about your book when I was reading it is how you associate mindset with the healing, because it's not just the food, and it's not just the calories, it's not just the exercise, it's releasing and de-associating with that trauma, with that past, with that story, so that you can fully integrate and fully heal and align all of that mental and physical and spiritual part that you're talking about. So I think that's a fascinating step that a lot of fitness people miss,
Yeah, and and I feel bad when there's a part of me that wants to de-associate with fitness, not because I want to say I'm better. Like it's not that. There's so much more to
Mhm.
it, and I am someone who, I was saying, like, I'm like a spin doctor. Like, what I really want to do is bring people in who have this pain, right? The pain of excess weight, right? But that pain, people go at that pain and they think it's this problem, but it's not that problem. It's these problems. And these problems are the root cause of most people's pain. But everyone's pain manifests differently. And that's the real key here. Just like when you go to a doctor and you're trying to go to a specialist, the thing is it's not the acute thing. It's the wholeness. And so even when it comes to weight loss, even when it comes to, it's the wholeness that needs to be known. It needs to be seen. It needs to be understood. And when we go for fitness, sure, you can lose weight. I see it all the time. I talk about it with people. It's like, I see before and afters all the time. But what happens a year later, 2 years later, something comes up, like the weight tends to come back on. One reason is because they're physically, like their strategy isn't great, because they're doing a quick fix. They're just trying to like get on the next thing, lose a bunch of weight. But a lot of times it's also number 2, where they're not dealing with the underlying issues. And again, the emotional stuff, which again, I always combined with energy, because the emotions allow you to know where you are energetically. I really want people to increase their consciousness, because if you increase your consciousness and you understand you have that spiritual awakening, or at least you have this pain, and the reason why we pain is it allows us to struggle, and that struggle allows us to be introduced to awakening.
Right.
And so, like, that's what I want. I want people to come in with the weight loss, for the weight loss, because they already have a pain there. And then I want to give them the medicine, the remedy that they don't know they need.
Well, it's, part of the psychological process. We cannot ever grow past our own self-belief of who we are. We can change it for a moment, but if you don't fully believe it, then you won't stay there. It's like lottery winners, right? They win the lottery and then within a year they're broke again, because you're right, their bank account changed, but their mindset about money didn't change. And everything is energy, whether it be money, weight loss, emotions, everything's
Einstein.
energy, right? So if you're not changing, like, I don't know, you can tune into a radio dial, right? But if you don't stay tuned into that dial, then it starts to become fuzzy and fade away, right? So you have to stay tuned into that, what you want, and you have to change that so that you're only attaching that frequency that's serving you well. Because if you tune into another dial, you're going to get crappy results, because that's where your dial is, right? So
Yeah.
I love that you introduce the energy and the mindset. I think it's such a healing, because people say they want one thing. They say, oh, I want the weight loss, or, oh, I want more money, or I want whatever.
Right.
But what they really want is to heal the pain, right? And they don't know that. They don't understand that.
They
So
want happiness, they want peace, they want
right.
fulfillment, and weight loss by itself will not bring that to you, because I know a lot of people, not not going to name names, but people who lose weight, but then they look for the painkiller somewhere else because they don't realize that the pain wasn't the weight, it was just the symptom. It was the symptom of the actual pain. And so the pain
Well,
is not the weight, it's just the symptom, really.
and I've actually known people who've replaced working out as their medication
Working out,
because
yeah.
yeah, they spend 5, 6, 7 hours in the gym because they think that, but that's still the replacement of not dealing with the pain. They've just replaced alcohol or drugs for lifting weights or being on a treadmill.
Yeah. And when it comes to women specifically, and I just want to kind of, obviously that's one of my main cat like audiences, although I would like to extend it to men as I move forward, but specifically for women, because of our bodies and our hormones and our cycling, we like working out a ton is just not good for us. It will cause like hormone imbalances. It will cause mood swings. It will cause you to actually increase inflammation in your body. It will cause disease. So when it comes to women, if your main, and I see this a lot in the fitness industry too, I even see this in old clients of mine who've gone off to be fitness professionals. They're so into it, they're addictive, which yes, if you're going to be addicted to something, fitness is probably the least harmful. Like you're not going to harm people. You're not going to like wake
Right.
up the next day and go, oh my God, what did I do yesterday? Oh yeah, I ran a marathon. Like it's not
Right.
like anything horrible is going to happen. But if you want to actually be healthy, when it comes to fitness, there are times of the month when we need to take a step back. There are times of the month when we shouldn't be running or lifting heavy. Even more, if you really want to dive into it and talk about the healing portion of it, there are times like we are built to do this in our month. And there are times every month where our pain bodies rise up and they're there for us to heal. And so anything that we haven't healed, whether it was through the month and we just kind of shoved it down with food, or we decided to go run it off instead of allowing that emotion, that pain to come up and be seen and felt, it will come up very strongly once a month. You can at least guarantee that. If not every, like it depends on your life, but like if you are finding ways to distract yourself, whether it's with food, whether it's with TV, whether it's with socializing, whether it's with exercise, all of these things that we're doing in our lives, but are really just distractions. Yeah, that stuff will come up. And so there is that like feminine part in my program. And I just bring it up because it is a huge part of healing, where women will think there's something wrong with me. I feel guilty. Why am I acting this way? Well, there's parts of the month where you should be nurturing yourself. There's parts of the month where your body is going to, your pain body, your energetic body is going to, because these are separate entities. Like they're actually talked about as separate entities. They're not you. They are not you. You must detach. They are not you. But they do come up. And if we're not dealing with that, and again, dealing with it as in not judging yourself because it's going to happen. It's supposed to happen. It's happening for a reason. It's not our job to judge. It's our job to be present with it and allow it to happen. And so even that much, like when it comes to healing, when it comes to releasing weight, physical, mental, or emotional, we want to start to really be in tune with our bodies and more than just the physical and what's going on behind the scenes, because it's going to allow you to heal. But also when it comes to healing, accepting the dark with the light, which is always going to be there because we're evolutionary people. Like we are meant to evolve, and you can't evolve if there's nothing to challenge you, to push you to evolve. Like people who live in a life of content, like they're just content, they're just happy. Again, go back to energy, you can see where content is. It's like the people underneath content are rich, but they're frustrated and they're overwhelmed and they're stressed and they're eating it, but they got some money. And then there's the content people who are like, life is fine, it's great. And everyone's looking at them going, that's where you need to be. But it's not, because in that contentment, there's no evolving. Maybe they're here to not evolve, and that's okay too, but that's not the goal for most of us. Most of us who are born with some or have lived through some kind of trauma, it is a great way to find that awakening.
Well, it's funny that you talk about this, and you're a lot younger than I am, so you won't probably remember, but years ago, there was something down here in Arizona called the Biodome, where it was an experimental living in this big, huge bubble. So there was, all the food and water and everything,
Wasn't
perfect
there
for
a
them.
movie about that with who's that actor? They had I swear they had some kind of movie about a biodome with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the movie part, but I do know that one of the things that they found in this biodome of perfection, where they were trying to, live this life, and they were doing the scientific studies, they found that the trees would only grow to a certain height and then fall over. Because when they built this biodome, what they discovered is that they forgot to add wind into the biodome. So the trees had no resistance. So their roots didn't grow long enough to withstand. So they'd only grow to a certain contentment spot and then topple over because they didn't have the struggle of fighting against the wind to make their roots longer. So it goes exactly to what you were saying about contentment. You have to have some struggle in order to have strengthened growth, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and I think that's something people want, this easy life.
Yeah.
But as one of my mentors says, your job isn't to wish that you had no problems. Your job is to grow into someone who can handle bigger problems,
Yeah.
right? Because
Would.
as you evolve, they get bigger.
Yeah.
So what's on the next phase of Mel's journey?
Mal's journey. Oh, well, it's very exciting. It's very, very exciting. I have so many things that I want to do. We'll see how life unfolds. Obviously, I just wrote this first draft of a book, so I'm gonna have a couple more drafts that I'm going to be creating. I'm going to be doing a regular webinar called Make Your Dream Body Your Reality, based on the book, also based on my program, The Ultimate Feminine Formula. And so that I'm going to start kind of getting into, and I really want to spread the message of this program, these methods that I've created to help women release weight and really find that inner empowerment, that ease. Yes, to find their dream body, because we are in physical form. So we want to, maintain this and feel really good down the line. Gosh, if I could live somewhere warm, hold retreats, I want to write another book, a real book, like a big book. Yeah, all of those things I want to do, but I want to keep following this path of, right now I'm really into weight loss and helping people get healthy. And I think that just comes from my past because I've been doing it for 22 years. But I would like to make not necessarily a full transition, because I like this as an introduction to get people get them in the webs of, increasing their consciousness and in the mind and the energy and stuff, kind of getting their feet wet so that they can be introduced to it, and then having a place where people are more advanced on their journey so that we can grow together as a collective. So we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, well, we'll drop some links so people can get in touch with you if they feel like they want to be a part of that as well. If you were to give two last questions that I always ask my guests, if you were to give one piece of advice for someone going through their own struggle, and in your case, probably a female, what would you impart to them to help them find their way out and stop holding those staff meetings in their head?
I think what I would have them do is really focus on the thoughts and the emotions that pop up and be aware of them. Do not judge them. Do not create a narrative around these things. Do not identify them. Just be with them. Just allow yourself to be the watcher. Allow yourself to understand that these thoughts are not you. The criticisms are not you, that you are this beautiful being that is at your core joy and love and consciousness. We are all connected. So if you can begin to just have a practice, just have more awareness that, again, these thoughts are not you. Just allow yourself to visualize stepping outside of the thoughts, even the feelings. If you're having emotion, don't judge. I have so many people who still judge when they're like, oh, I was feeling so. Don't step outside. It's there. Witness, be a witness. Pretend like, like when you're a child, it's like you don't need help. You don't need directions. You just want to be seen. So be seen for that part of you. And the more you do that, the more conscious you'll be in everything that you'll do. Obviously, there's a lot of things you can do, but I think that is huge for people because I feel like people don't know that. They don't realize that their thoughts, people say your thoughts aren't you, your body isn't you, but what does that mean? And that's what I think.
Yeah, I think grace is so important because we're easy to give that to others, but not ourselves. I tell my wife all the time because she's very much a critic of herself. Stop beating yourself up with Thor's hammer. Like, you just be graceful with, give the love and grace to yourself that you do others. One
Another
last
thing to say
question.
is well, I was going to say an exercise.
Yes.
But for real, and I always tell people because I like to have this warning is it's not about calories. It's not about burning fat. I always tell people I never look at my workouts as a way to lose weight. That's the diet. That's like making healthier choices. The exercise specifically speaks to energy. And when you exercise, it gives you energy. When you exercise, it gives you focus, productivity, peace. It helps you think more clearly. It allows you to create more in your life. A lot of times people exercise or don't exercise because they don't have energy. But the thing is, exercise gives you energy. They'll be working on their stuff. And I work with women who are, have these very demanding jobs. It's like, if you want to be better at your job, if you want to be able to handle more, if you want to be more creative, if you want to have more solutions, don't put your workouts to the side and I have a lot of people like, I'm just going to finish this project and then I will get back to working on me. It will never happen. You will never finish the projects. You will never come to an end. It will never be finished. There will always be more unless you don't take care of yourself. So get your workout in and it will improve everything, your mood, your energy. You'll get more done. You'll get more done in work if you had not worked out. So anything, a walk, lifting, dancing, run around your house cleaning, move your body daily.
Put some music on.
Put the music on, yes.
Yeah, I love that you incorporate body and mind together, of all the fitness people. You're one of my favorite because you take it to the next level and you incorporate the really important stuff. It's not just about the diet. So I love that. You're part of my world now, a warrior spirit. So I ask you the same question I ask all my guests. What does a warrior spirit mean to Mel?
Warrior spirit. For me, it means being brave enough to tell the truth. Honestly, standing up for the truth, whatever that is, whether it's what's going on in the world, whether it's what's going on in your heart, just really being able to stand up and tell the truth with yourself, with the people you love. We need more people brave enough to speak the truth.
I think that's beautiful. And I appreciate you joining me today. Thank you for your time. And I look forward to seeing where your journey takes you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
All righty. Have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.